Hello and welcome to a tour of Hangar 21. So this is the third map in the Final Stand DLC, and this is a very impressive map. In fact, it's my favourite of the three we've had so far. So working up the hill we come to the first objective, which is F. And this is a little complex. There's a building that's there on the right that's destroyable. And then you've got this kind of loading area and dock, and on top you've got a couple of the new pod launchers. Let's have a look at this from the ground and we can show you how those pod launchers work. This is a ground level view of the approach to F. So the building on the right here, that's completely destroyable. It can be flat by the end of the map, and so can the little wall sections around it. It's pretty well overlooked at F. It's the lowest point on the map, so you're always going to need to look upwards when you're down here. We've got a metal storm launcher at the front of the base, and this walkway is pretty secure. It hides you from a lot of helicopters and jets, which are a dominant feature on this map. This top section might overlook the actual base, but it's level with the ground at the back. On this roof section we have the two pod launchers. Now these are a kind of homage to the pod launchers that were in 2142. 2142 they were mounted on vehicles. These are stationary kind of guns that literally fire soldiers around the map. Now this base is closest to the US spawn, which is at the bottom of the hill, and if the Russians get here like we are now, it's really bad news for the US side, because all their helicopters and jets have pretty much got to come over this point and you're looking down onto the US spawn. Also it means that you've got control of both sets of pod launchers usually, and you simply get in, aim the launcher where you want it to go, work out a rough trajectory and fire yourself off. So they can get you all the way from F to the hangar doors. So the pods mean it's very hard to get capped out on this map. Right, so that was F. We'll move across the valley towards D, which is radio tower. And it's a tower very similar to the one in Zavod, except they have made a few changes, probably based on the experience of this tower being a pain in the ass on Zavod. But the biggest difference is its positioning. It's not the tallest point on the map by any means, so the top of the tower isn't a dominant position. Let's have a look at D from ground level. So first thing you notice as you approach it is that there's an awful lot of cover around it. There's a lot of rocks and it's overlooked by the radio tower that's on top of the cliff. The buildings themselves down here are destructible, so you can take out all the walls. Not sure if it collapses fully, not seen it do that, but yeah, most of the walls will disappear. And in another change to the Zavod tower, the top of the tower is destructible as well. The walls come off that. So again, they're trying to make it so the tower isn't over dominant on the area around it. In fact, it took me a few attempts to actually film getting up to the top of the tower. So past the metal storm launcher, up the walkways. The room is pretty much the same as the one on Zavod, except the walls can now be blown away. And the top of the tower is the same as well. However, up here is a railgun. But like I say, you're vulnerable up here, so grab it and get off. So the railgun is a hard-hitting single-shot sniper rifle, anti-vehicle rifle. It's got a horrendous delay before you pulling the trigger and it firing. But I'll cover that in a different video. Before we go to the next objective, we'll just have a look at the hills that surround D. So this is a very popular point. In fact, you'll get as many fights up here as you will do at some of the objectives. Across the valley to the other side is E, and E is pretty barren. There's almost nothing here. There's a few little trenches and walls, one relatively deep hole, but that's it really. From ground level it doesn't look quite so barren because the rocks and trenches are a bit larger than they appear from the spectator view, but as you can see it is still pretty barren and coverless. So I like to drop down one of these decoys and then move away, so that gives them the idea that there's somebody in that little hole. And from up at E you can look down on F and across at D, and you can occasionally take pot shots up towards the doorways if you've got a sniper rifle. With the DMR it's a bit difficult, but as you can see the view is good, but you're very open. If a chopper flies over you're in real trouble, so it's a good place to be armed with stingers, E. Now there's a road that leads up to C, which is the next point up the hill, and C looks like it should go into the hill, but it doesn't. The flag itself is undercover and quite well protected from snipers and helicopters, and those are usually a primary concern if you're playing in the outside areas. The only real problem with C is that it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. You know, it's a long way of open ground to get to E. You can get to F, and if you go up these steps onto the roof there is a very long and winding pathway up to the hangar itself, but if you go up there you're going to get sniped a lot. But this is a good place if you hold the hangar to defend it, because you can take out the helicopters before they manage to actually get up to the hangar. If you put 2 or 3 guys with stingers up here you can pretty much dominate the helicopters at least. Jets are a bit more tricky, but the helicopters you can certainly keep out of the way. There are a couple of different paths up the winding hill towards the hangars and B and A. Now first I'm going to look at is the underground section. Now this is the small section of this area of the map, but it is still quite a large expansive area. But it's a very dangerous area. The Titan that's parked up above, you can test fire its engines, and that engulfs the whole of this area in flame. If you look at it when you're on the ground, it's very impressive. But the major impression you get from this area is just the scale of it. It's so much easier to see when you're on foot than it is when you're flying around. It is massive. And this is just the bottom layer. This is here kind of like an afterthought. It's not a major combat area. And what you really don't want to see when you come down here is that light flashing away. That means somebody's pressed the button up above, and we're about to get a bird's eye view of what it's like. So there's the engine flame, and even though I duck into cover and am pretty much near the entrance, I take 84 damage from that. Any closer and it'll kill you. It also creates a massive amount of black smoke which clings around the front of the hangar doors and this entire area, so you can't really see that much. With the hangar doors closed, the only way in is through these little doors in the edges, and this is the first part of B. So B is kind of blocked off on ground level by this wall that runs all the way across. You've got multiple staircases and levels in this area, and even though B is a small section of this hangar, it's pretty impressive in scale. On the ground we're going to approach through the doors we've just seen on screen, and there's a lot of little corridors and nooks and crannies that let you get around B without having to be in the main hangar. And as you can see, it's a big area, and you do have to look out because you can get shot from walkways, you can get shot from the actual Titan itself. This is the area immediately behind the hangar doors, and you've got staircases that can go right up to the top level in the entranceway. so trying to prevent people getting around inside here is a bit tricky. There are tons of different ways to get into each level and around. Here you've got a couple of elevators. There's one there and there's one at the other end, where this guy is unfortunately going to make it because I'm a lousy shot. But on this map, it's the overall scale that is going to impress. You know, this Titan that's hanging here up above is the size of an aircraft carrier, and it's inside a building. This might be one of the most impressive pieces of level design I've seen in a Battlefield game, because there's nothing here that seems placeholder. Everything seems to be there for a reason, and it's really nicely laid out. So now we're up at A, and A's at the back of the Titan on the deck, and the deck of the Titan gives you a whole other massive area to fight on, and there's enough space in here to get helicopters flying around. But let's go back on foot so you can really appreciate the scale of this thing. So here we are on the deck of the Titan, and yes, that is a helicopter flying around. You get that quite a lot if the doors are left open. It does take a skilled pilot to get in here and stay level, and here you can see the enemy attack chopper appearing in here as well. So this is quite a massive area for a fight, and it gets really busy, and because there are so many little walkways and different paths into this area, it's almost impossible to stop the enemy completely. So you've got areas like this behind the objective, so there's a lot of cover, places to hide, places to drop spawn beacons. It's just a really well thought out area. It looks like somebody designed a proper hangar. It doesn't really feel like, oh well, we've just taken a load of stuff, thrown it in there and thrown the Titan in it. You know, all of these little areas seem to have been worked out, well designed. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff we've seen before, but it's all been put together really well. And just to give you an idea of how big this hangar is, I'm going to run from one end to the other. And I can tell you, because I've timed it, it takes 30 seconds for your character to sprint from one end of this hangar to the doors. And I'm going to pull up short here because that guy there has just operated the button to open up these doors, and that's going to let both of these helicopters out. Now these guys are pretty good at flying helicopters because they both managed to make it the full length of the hangar and fly out through the doors. This space is just really impressive, and to be honest, the whole of this map is. It's just... Hangar 21 may well be the best Battlefield 4 map there is. Now the pod system makes it a bit quirky, but the design of this map and the scale of this hangar is just great. And it really points out the bad bits of design on Whiteout and on Giants. But you can't take anything away from Hangar 21. It's a really good map. The outside areas are fun to play. It's not over dominated by the air power. There's no armour on it, and the pod system needs a few tweaks, but works really well at stopping people getting just pinned into their own end. And the pod system could solve the problems with Whiteout. Why not have a couple of pod launchers that can fire infantry across that no man's land to the points E and F that are stuck out on their own? And I don't think there's been a map that's looked as good as Hangar 21 in the entire Battlefield franchise. It's got low level clouds, it's got that dusky nighttime look, so all the shots ring out and are pretty obvious. It's a really nice looking map, and there's a lot of attention being paid to the details on this map. So Dice LA have done a really good job with this one, and with a few tweaks the others will be pretty good as well. But this may well be the best map in Battlefield 4. And you know, I'm quite happy to grumble about things, but this map really makes me smile. Thanks for watching.